Country music has never been short on dramatic moments, but few rival the night in 1982 when Gene Watson and George Jones faced off at the Grand Ole Opry. Whispered about for decades, this showdown has entered Nashville folklore as the evening pure country triumphed over a rising tide of polished, pop-influenced sounds. Back then, the genre stood at a crossroads. Many executives believed crossover hits were the future, while traditionalists worried country's soul was at risk. George Jones, hailed as the king of heartbreak ballads, was at the height of his fame but also carried the baggage of missed shows. Gene Watson, though respected, remained overshadowed by bigger names. Nobody expected sparks to fly when both men arrived at the Opry that October night, yet a single offhand remark lit the fuse for a clash remembered today. In 1982, the country landscape leaned toward a sleek urban cowboy sound, fueled by crossover artists who topped both country and pop charts. Traditionalists like Merle Haggard, Loretta Lynn, and Jones resisted the shift, clinging to steel guitars and raw storytelling. Gene Watson was among those struggling to be heard in a market that favored polished production. Known for hits such as Farewell Party, he possessed a shimmering tenor and a devotion to classic country rhythms. However, critics often tagged him as second tier, and big labels weren't sure how to market a pure country singer in a world moving faster every day. The Grand Ole Opry, revered as the heart of authentic country, still showcased roots-driven artistry. On any given weekend, legends mingled with newcomers backstage, forging friendships or stoking friendly rivalries with a shared love for the music's heritage. Jones's unpredictability was legendary. Fans joked about "No-Show Jones," referencing his history of missing concerts, often due to personal demons. Still, whenever he did appear, he reminded everyone why he was called the greatest voice in country music. That October night, he arrived early for once, in high spirits. The backstage chatter shifted from typical small talk to a buzz about Jones's rumored remark, "There ain't a man alive who can out-sing me." People brushed it off as standard bravado from a performer confident in his own legend. But Gene Watson, typically reserved, heard those words. According to witnesses, he didn't flinch or argue. He simply kept tuning his guitar, gaze fixed. Despite the unspoken tension, the show carried on with its usual format, unaware that the stage was set for an unforgettable encounter that would rock the Opry. When Jones took the stage, he aimed straight for the crowd's heart, performing "Still Doin' Time" to roaring applause. His voice flowed effortlessly, each note bearing the ache that fans couldn't get enough of. Then, catching even his band off guard, he launched into "He Stopped Loving Her Today." That song, rarely done without a spotlight moment, brought the house to a standstill. People clutched their seats, tears welling up at the raw emotion. Some backstage sensed Jones was making a statement. If any singer hoped to top him, they'd have to climb a mountain. Watching intently from the wings, Gene Watson seemed more curious than intimidated. In that charged atmosphere, the audience roared its approval as Jones left the stage. But just beyond the bright lights, Watson was preparing to answer the unspoken challenge with a performance nobody expected. Scheduled to perform next, Watson signaled his band that he was changing the set list. Instead of sticking to the planned number, he stepped up to the microphone and paused. The room quieted, possibly sensing history in the making. Then came the opening chords of "Farewell Party," a ballad famous for its demanding final note. Known among country aficionados as the standard by which vocalists prove their mettle, it was the sort of number you wouldn't tackle unless you were fully prepared to leave it all on stage. Watson's voice rose clear as a bell, capturing heartbreak and hope in every line. When he arrived at the towering finish, jaws dropped. The applause that thundered through the Opry House rivaled anything heard that night. Instead of bowing out, Watson transitioned into another song, determined to seize the moment while adrenaline coursed through him. Accounts differ regarding George Jones's immediate reaction, but several onlookers claimed he stood at the side of the stage, arms folded, watching Watson with a mix of surprise and admiration. This wasn't a mere act of defiance. It was a masterclass in vocal prowess. Watson's second number showcased subtle phrasing and depth, reminding everyone that he wasn't just a high-note wonder. By the time he wrapped up, the crowd was on its feet. Applause echoed off the rafters, and veteran Opry performers whispered to one another that they hadn't witnessed such electricity in years. Watson's expression betrayed relief, pride, and maybe even shock at the outpouring of support. As he stepped backstage, the tension that had been simmering all night finally reached a boil, waiting to see if Jones would acknowledge what had just happened. Jones could have responded with anger or dismissal. Instead, he approached Watson in a gesture that took many by surprise. Their words weren't recorded, but legend has it, Jones offered a heartfelt acknowledgement, something along the lines of, "Son, I didn't think anyone could do that anymore." For a moment, the backstage clamor hushed, as if everyone wanted to hear the exact phrasing. Whatever he said, it was enough to diffuse any notion of animosity. Two country purists had pushed each other to new heights, reminding the industry that real vocal power transcends trends. Reporters lurking nearby hoped for quotes that might stir controversy, yet they got only mutual respect. From that moment, the fabled showdown became more symbol than rivalry, a testament to the enduring magic of authentic country and the camaraderie that defines its greatest practitioners. By the next morning, Nashville was buzzing with the story. Fans who attended the Opry spread the tale, and radio stations lit up with callers recounting the spine-tingling showdown they'd witnessed. Newspapers and industry magazines picked up the thread, framing it as an epic clash that revitalized interest in traditional country singing. Watson, long seen as a regional act, suddenly found himself in higher demand. Venues that might have passed over him were now eager to book a performer who had dared to stand toe-to-toe with George Jones. Meanwhile, country radio programmers took a fresh listen to Watson's back catalog, discovering the power in tracks they'd once overlooked. Watson's label, which had nudged him to adopt a more modern sound, backed off. If a straightforward steel and fiddle ballad could bring an entire Opry crowd to its feet, why tamper with success? For George Jones, the evening proved humility could be a wellspring of renewed respect. He'd built his career on soulful interpretations that moved audiences to tears, and while personal issues often overshadowed his achievements, nobody doubted his vocal gift. Still, the idea that someone else could match him, maybe even challenge him, was unthinkable to many. Jones's gracious response to Watson's performance only amplified his legend. Industry veterans praised him for recognizing talent rather than doubling down on ego. Younger singers took note. If the mighty George Jones could show admiration for a fellow crooner, maybe there was room for more genuine camaraderie in a cutthroat business. In the weeks that followed, Jones dismissed any notion that he'd been shown up. Instead, he praised Watson as a guardian of the true country spirit, an attitude that echoed through Nashville's rumor mill with surprising positivity. Behind the scenes, label executives debated whether the pop country wave had peaked. If a purely traditional moment could spark this much conversation, maybe the drive toward crossover hits wasn't as irresistible as they'd thought. True, artists like Kenny Rogers were still dominating charts, but the showdown suggested a significant audience remained hungry for steel guitars and raw emotion. Some insiders called it a watershed moment, while others saw it as a lucky break for Watson. Regardless, bookings for both singers soared. Jones continued his streak of sold-out shows, while Watson found new doors opening in major venues nationwide. Industry writers who dismissed Watson as a minor figure now hailed him as the standard bearer for the genre's roots. Fans outside Texas, many hearing Watson's name for the first time, rushed to discover the voice that had stunned the Opry. Rumors, of course, proliferated. Some claimed the entire showdown had been staged to drum up excitement for a slow ticket season at the Opry. Others speculated that Watson's label orchestrated a publicity stunt, urging him to pick the most challenging ballad in his catalog to seize the headlines. The truth was simpler. In the heated atmosphere of backstage gossip and artistic pride, Watson heard Jones's boasting and decided to answer with the one thing that mattered most: his voice. George Jones, whether aware of it or not, became a catalyst for one of the most talked about nights in country history. The sense of authenticity surrounding the event only heightened its impact. Fans craved realness, and they got it. Two men stood on that stage and delivered unstoppable performances, not for clout or money, but for the pure love of the music they represented. In the weeks that followed, Watson's booking agents juggled phone calls from promoters suddenly eager to feature him. He found himself invited onto radio shows that had once overlooked him. The shift felt surreal. Watson remarked in a later interview that he hadn't planned to upstage anyone. He'd merely seized the opportunity to show what he could do. George Jones kept touring as well, bolstered by fans who admired his willingness to share the spotlight. Country publications ran headlines about the night traditional country struck back, signaling a broader revival of interest in heritage sounds. Even the Grand Ole Opry benefited. Ticket sales spiked as people hoped to witness more unexpected moments. Historians argue that while the showdown didn't single-handedly save traditional country, it certainly reminded executives and fans alike that Nashville still had room for pure, unfiltered music. As months turned into years, the legacy of that 1982 evening grew. Younger traditionalists like Randy Travis, Alan Jackson, and Ricky Van Shelton cited Watson and Jones as inspirations for sticking to a classic style. Nashville began to see the emergence of a new traditionalist movement, echoing the sentiment that authenticity would always have a place. The storyline of two seasoned performers captivating a jaded audience resonated across the industry. Interviews with Watson revealed a humble man who still revered Jones as the master. For his part, Jones often told reporters that Watson embodied the soul of country singing. Neither publicly labeled the night a contest. Both recognized it as something bigger, a validation that genuine artistry could still cut through the noise. And for fans, it became one of those legendary, I was there stories that never loses its allure. Country music has a way of generating myths, some grander than the truth. Yet the Watson-Jones showdown remains special because its essence is verifiable. Attendees talk about how the air in the Opry felt electric, how each note from Watson's throat seemed infused with purpose. Jones's decision to sing "He Stopped Loving Her Today" earlier than usual was either a spontaneous flourish or a calculated signal. Whatever it was, it set the stage perfectly for Watson's bravura performance. In the end, nobody stormed off, no fists were thrown, and no harsh words were exchanged. The tension manifested in the music itself, culminating in a moment that transcended personal rivalries. Later retellings often add hyperbole, but at its core, the night was about two gifted artists pushing boundaries, leaving behind an indelible mark on the genre they both cherished. The Opry, for its part, reaped the rewards. Word of an historic night brought renewed interest in the venerable institution, which some critics had labeled old-fashioned. Tourists and die-hard fans started flocking to see if lightning might strike again. Though the Opry had always boasted real talent, the showdown revitalized its image as a crucible of spontaneity. Performers felt the shift, too. Nobody wanted to be caught phoning in a performance when so many watchers remembered how Watson had swung for the fences. Slowly, a wave of respect for tradition rolled through the industry. Even some crossover stars acknowledged the showdown's impact, noting it sparked deeper conversations about the future of country music. That night didn't stop pop country from thriving, but it reaffirmed that the classic style was far from dead and that a single performance could still spark widespread change. Over time, Watson and Jones shared stages again, though neither tried to replicate the 1982 fireworks. That magic had been a product of surprise, tension, and mutual respect, elements that can't be manufactured on demand. Audiences flocked to see them, hoping to catch even a fraction of the spark that electrified the Opry. Each show reinforced the notion that while trends ebb and flow, real country singing never goes out of style. Jones's rough edges and emotional depth found a mirror in Watson's smooth clarity and controlled passion. Together, they symbolized different facets of the same musical lineage, bridging generational gaps. Fans recalled how even the purest voices can slip under the radar until a single night changes everything. Their partnership, though informal, reminded everyone that greatness doesn't have to come wrapped in drama. Sometimes it just appears unstoppable on a stage. Rumors persisted, both men politely dodging the question of who won. Privately, they insisted no winner was needed. Jones later commented in interviews that he wished more artists would pour their hearts into performances instead of chasing commercial formulas. Watson echoed that sentiment, attributing his success to a steadfast commitment to the real country sound. The showdown became a parable for aspiring singers who wondered if it was too risky to stay traditional in a changing industry. The answer, repeated time and again, was that authenticity resonates. If you deliver it with conviction, audiences will respond. Neither Watson nor Jones soared into mainstream pop stardom as a result, but they didn't need to. They already occupied a place in the hearts of country devotees who cherished sincerity over glitz. And that, in the long run, proved to be the more enduring victory. In the years that followed, interviews, books, and documentaries kept the showdown story alive. Radio hosts replayed the recordings of Watson's performance, marveling at the high note that made the Opry crowd go silent before roaring its approval. Jones's pivot to "He Stopped Loving Her Today" also remained a favorite discussion point. Was it an intentional gauntlet or a spur-of-the-moment decision? Even those who questioned the authenticity of the entire event admitted the emotional force was undeniable. Scholars of country music placed the showdown within a broader context, arguing it signaled a cultural reaffirmation of tradition at a time when the genre was drifting. Whether or not that's overstating its significance, there's no doubt that for one night, purists felt vindicated, modernists paused to reconsider, and two artists etched their names deeper into the annals of country's storied history. George Jones eventually passed in 2013, leaving behind a legacy as the King of Broken Hearts. Gene Watson continued performing, his voice remarkably steady through the decades. Both men looked back on that night with fondness, each noting how they'd never planned a public showdown. Fate and pride had conspired to create a moment that cut through the noise. For Watson, it was a life-changing experience that pushed him further into the national spotlight. For Jones, it served as a reminder that nobody, not even a legend, is immune to being challenged. Their mutual respect only grew from there. Old interview footage shows them praising each other, gently ribbing about that evening, but always returning to the same conclusion: the music won. If you ask them, the best possible outcome was that fans got to witness country at its purest. No gimmicks, no compromise. Ultimately, the 1982 showdown stands as a testament to how a single performance can crystallize what country music is all about: sincerity, emotion, and raw vocal talent. In an industry so often driven by commercial metrics, nights like that serve as a wake-up call, reminding everyone that real artistry can't be mass-produced. Fans still speak of the hush that fell when Watson soared through Farewell Party, and the awe that followed Jones's unwavering baritone on a song many consider the definitive heartbreak ballad. Decades later, newcomers to country discover this tale and find themselves captivated by an era when a bold, unplanned moment could captivate the entire genre. The Watson-Jones showdown remains a beacon that proves traditional country, when executed with heart and conviction, has a staying power no trend can overshadow. And that's the story that remains, long after the applause has faded. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.